Hello, beautiful souls. Namaste. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sadhana, and today I am here carrying on with a series in the Herbcrafter's Tarot. And I invite you to join in the discussion. This is an extra episode. Normally, I am doing deck deep dives 4 times a week, and today is the fifth Wednesday of the month. So this is an extra week, and I just thought I would keep this public, just letting more of you know what we're doing in deep dives. And I want to invite you to join in the conversation. We have had some really beautiful conversations and sharing lots of personal information, and that's one of the reasons why, for the most part, this series is closed to members only. It also allows me to really focus on my train of thought and not get lost in any shenanigans that may or may not be going on in the chat, which sometimes can be a bit of a distraction. It is very warm here. I'm hoping I can. Anyway, let's dive into this. So the Herbcrafter's Tarot is a tarot deck, as you're probably aware, that came out several years ago, created by Joanna Powell. I always get her name wrong. Colbert. Oh my goodness. Creative of the guy in tarot. Colbert. Joanna Powell Colbert is the artwork. These beautiful photographs that have been staged and then colored on with the Prisma pencil crayons. And this is a project I'm thinking of also bringing into this series as well too. So we may do a bit of part in this particular deck deep dive. And Letitia Guthrie is I want to say a mentor of Joanna's, and contributed to the herbal information, the herb crafting information. And for the most part, if you're not familiar, these plants are from 2 different areas of the United States. So the Pacific Northwest for sure, and then one of the deserts. I'm sorry, I don't have this information handy, but this is very centered on herb crafting in the US. And I know there have been some requests by other people to create a similar deck that was based in other parts of the world, because this really is a brilliant deck. So we started this series looking at the curanderas, which are the kings in this deck. The curanderas are the master herb crafters, if you will, the ones who have spent their whole life following their older sisters, their mothers, their aunties in the community, and learning the art of herb crafting. And so I thought that was a beautiful way to start this series. So be sure to check out that episode. I believe that's also a public episode. And then we dove into the sevens, which have a magical connection to the curanderas. And then we went back to the aces, and we looked at the aces and the twos. And there were some questions. These are personal questions of mine that came up last week, and I'm going to repeat them in case you forgot, because I decided, based on these questions, that we're going to go a little bit sideways, and we're going to go off and look at the intention for the elements before we go back to the numbers. Okay, so on August 31st, these are my notes. Question 1 was, are the plants in the suit of earth more multi-use than other suits? So that was a question that arose during our discussion. And then another question was, is the suit of air or water more aligned to the heart chakra? And so during the discussion, I started having these reflections on wondering if there were chakra associations I could build into my interpretations within this deck. So then I decided that I was going to look, we're going to look at each of the suits, all of the cards, all of the minors, all of the majors, just have like an overview, what their intention is, because I think this overview is one that's definitely overlooked in reading the deck, and we can gain some really beautiful insight from this. So if you haven't already done so, please pull out your air cards as well as your air majors. So I have pulled out the Star, the Lovers, the Magician, the Fool, Awakening, and Justice. Those aren't in order, by the way. Okay, so we're going to look to the element of air. Welcome to Taliana and Evangelina. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, let's zoom in. I'm going to move this. Sorry, I'm going to move this over a little bit and to do this. Okay. And some of these cards we have looked at and others not so much. This is really interesting. I'm looking at the fact that there is a scythe in the 10 of air. There is a scythe. And now this particular tool has a different name. They do not refer to it as a scythe. I have this all outlined in my book somewhere. Okay. Which makes perfect sense for the suit of air, right? We also have familiar symbols of feathers. I feel like I backed off too much. I have to tell you, this 6 of air is one of my favorite cards. I don't know if these are blue heron feathers, but they look like it a lot. We have sage bundles being created here, lavender, and I will speak to that in regards to my heart chakra question, echinacea, licorice, pomegranate, chicory. So there we have another tool. 7 of air is eucalyptus. We have barbed wire. Adelita of air is oregano, and Hia of air is catnip. Okay, so these are the cards that we're going to start to reflect on. And I think what I'll do is I'll put them in order from ace through 10, though that's not entirely necessary. We have looked at the aces already. Okay. And there's the Curandera there. So let's build in a story between these two cards. And according to the front, the introduction in the guidebook, this particular suit is about noticing. Noticing. And the creators say the suit of air honors the medicine that comes from noticing, observing plants, observing the plants as they are. Air cards show tall, sword-like plants outside. So the entire suit is outdoors. And I think that in itself is something to recall as you're doing a reading, because there is a different energy outdoors as opposed to indoors. Okay, so this is something that we can work with in readings. Now, what does noticing mean? And how are we going to work with the energy of noticing and observation? What this to me refers to, so there's a couple of things. One, these are tall plants that take on tall, slender plants that reach up for the sky. They don't tend to fill out. And so there is this sense of being higher up. And when we are higher up, we have a bigger picture view. So if in this deck, the suit of swords is about observation, where can we go with this as far as medicine goes? What does observation teach us? And I think this to me is when I am focusing on the teaching or myself doing work with the third eye chakra. And sorry, I'm going to have a lot of random thoughts here. This is not scripted. The power of the witness and the skills of observation and learning to get out of the little story and see the big picture is an important part of growing. And it's also an important part of dealing with the other suits, dealing with the lessons of the other suits. Now, one of the things I also mentioned and asked was, why have the creators put this suit first? In a RWS-based Golden Dawn system, we tend to start with the suit of fire, following the pattern of the Tetragrammaton, YHVH. But here there is, I'm feeling more so, a very specific intention for beginning with the suit of air. And that is similar to why we start with the third eye chakra when we're doing chakra sadhana or chakra workshops and so forth. We exercise the third eye chakra. We purify the third eye chakra so that all of the other work becomes easier and the connections begin to be built. So here in the Herbcrafter's Tarot, we're looking at, we're outside, and naturally being outdoors helps us to create a sense of bigger picture, right? We are in wide open spaces. We're not lost in crowded space. So the perception changes a little bit, you know, like for example, in the Two of Chicory, we're a little bit closer in. We're able to see the landscape in the Ace. And so some will appear to have a wider lens. So for example, look at licorice here in the Eight of Air. The perspective, could we use the keyword perspective for this suit? This particular suit is asking us to change lenses, to choose a wide angled lens. And this is a really important skill as a reader, as a healer, as a person who does self-study and works with the tarot for self-study. And if this is a deck that you've previously used only card by card for exploring herbcrafting, I think as we journey through this deep dive, we're going to find it has a lot more, there's a lot more potential here. There's many more things we can do with this deck. Okay. So perspective, what is the perspective of the Hia or the Adalita or the Curandera in each of these pictures? And what are they aware of and what are they looking at? Okay, so remember that as we begin the suits, we're looking at plants that are considered to be weeds. They are easier to find. And as we make our way up through each of the suits, the plants become a little fussier. But there's some other things here that I feel are really important to the suit of air. In the 3, we have Echinacea. Again, another plant that reaches tall and teaches us about health in general. This is quite the plants that are chosen for this particular suit, I feel that their lessons and their metaphors go deep and wide. They might be a little bit older, mythologically speaking. I would have to reflect on that. Now, a lot of these plants, I'm just looking at what we've got here, are quite aromatic. And I know herbs in general are quite aromatic, and there may be a reason why these plants are best observed outdoors. Okay, I'm going to pause there. When we are working with noticing and the skills of observation and big picture, trying to create a different perspective, allowing a different perspective, one of the things that, sorry, I'm very distracted by the power tools outside. One of the things that we want to try to do is to tame the senses. And so what I was considering is, if we are working with some of these plants indoors, for example, if we were distilling eucalyptus indoors, it would be very, very overwhelming. When we're working with and collecting lavender, whether we're working with the flowers or the leaves themselves, these are really potent. They're very potent. And I don't know how many of you have actually made sage bundles. It's almost overwhelming working with these plants. And so I just have this feeling that there's perhaps underlying layers, and I'm sure in other suits, in other elements, there will be plants that are very aromatic and quite challenging to work with inside. But there's something about some of these plants, and it's interesting. I have worked with many of these plants and personally, and so I feel I kind of know, like I'm sharing with you my personal observations, okay? So there is the whole idea of being outside, big picture, and seeing how that perspective, that lens can help us to gain clarity. Perhaps the Suit of Swords is the lens. It is a lens through which we can look and examine the other suits. Is this a suit? Now, this is very different. If I'm going to follow through with this, very different than looking at swords in other decks. If this is the deck that's asking us to embrace that witness, the inner witness, to learn to observe life, then what, right? Then this is then we could, in theory, perhaps there's a 9-card reading, and it's almost as if with the air cards, we want to look through them to what's going on in the other cards. It's like they offer a filter for the messages from the other cards. This is a totally random thought. So Tamian offers, thoughts can be overwhelming and need a breath to clear your head. So Tamian's going with the, right? So the suit of air is connected to mind, thoughts, voice. Now, another piece about this particular suit that gets really challenging is we are on this journey from knowledge to wisdom. And while we are collecting book wisdom, I wonder, we do have letters in the 6. How many of these cards do we have books in? I'm wondering. While we are on the journey from, so in the 7, there is a book. That may be the only one. It's not a number where books are predominant. There is letters in the 6 and a book in the 7. This is a very interesting aspect of healing journey and moving through this suit. The more that we can let go and move into a place of trust, the more that we fall into the side of wisdom and away from book knowledge. The 3 has a book or a letter. echinacea. I wonder if that's a metal roof, actually. I don't know if that's a book. I was thinking that's a metal roof in the distance. Okay. The suit of air is about observation, not about action. So there's this whole sense of pausing and reflecting. Very, very interesting. The tool is the scythe, which goes by a different name in this deck. I'll see if I can get that name. And I don't think I could pronounce it. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it's not in my head. I know each of these, it shouldn't be too far back in my notes. I was deep, deep in this when I was initially doing the preparation for the series. Here we go. I have this lovely chart that I created. So the tool is the boline. The boline. This is a suit of learning and noticing, observing and witnessing. Okay, now I have a question about the intersection of these minor cards with the majors. And we can look at them. Let's go with them in order from the smallest number. The sunflower is a plant that grows very tall. You think it's a roof too? Okay. Good, good. I'm loving this train of thought you've got going here. So keep it up, Tamian. Vange, let us know what you're thinking here as well too. So if you think of the sunflower grows on a very, there are dwarf varieties, but generally it's on a very tall stalk, looking over the whole garden. Okay, so that very much fits into the shape and the design of these flowers. Noticing and observation. Okay, so let's look at these two together. I should put them like this. I know there's no order, but what comes first, the chicken or the egg? 0. So dandelion. Dandelion doesn't fit into this. Dandelion, generally speaking, the Fool is associated with the element of air. And dandelion is quite close to the ground. It is intensely strong and bitter. Now, perhaps here's another inquiry we could do. So if you look at all of the taste experiences of these plants, bitter, sweet, pungent, those kinds of categories, I'm wondering if we have a bitter flavor to this particular suit. Just a thought, as opposed to spicy in fire. And I'm wondering if bitter, because I know dandelion greens are bitter. I'd have to go back through all of these and see if that is a, and I would have to look that up as well too, because I don't know if, for example, sage would be considered a bitter. That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about this before. Okay, so observation. This is about noticing. Does the Fool, as the dandelion, fit into observation and noticing? Dandelion is one of the plants where we can use the roots, we can use the leaves, we can use the flowers. All of the plant is available. Does it help us to focus on direction? Sorry, not direction. Does it help us with noticing in any way? I have, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking about blowing the dandelion seed, the dandelion spores. I need to think about that. Okay, so hawthorn. Now this is a plant I've never foraged. I do not know how hawthorn grows, but this is the element of air. Cannabis. So I know cannabis can grow quite tall. And cannabis, so I had another question. Do you think that these majors in any way enhance our power of observation? And I don't know what the medicine, I think dandelion is astringent. And I don't know if dandelion affects the mind. Cannabis, that's kind of a no-brainer. And this particular plant, so holy basil tulsi, has a quality that for sure is going to help us with a higher frequency of mind. And I think that's one of the reasons why the tulsi plant, the tulsi stalks are used for mullahs, used for making mullahs. And I promise you, I will share that video at some point. I think what I might do is put it into the Facebook group. So tulsi mullahs are a very high frequency mullah. So here's the question, and these are all just journal questions you can start to reflect upon to help us understand how the element of air influences a reading in this particular deck. Something about perspective, something about and this question was, do these cards enhance our ability to see? Now I know the fungi card is not here, so that would definitely be one that would fit into here. And then the star is the cottonwood. So I don't know about that. I think there's a few different layers that we can work with in each of the suits. And as we go through and look at the intention for the suit, is there a chakra association? Is there a taste association? Are there other associations that we can draw in? Okay, so Evangelina says, the bitterness of dandelion helps liver to detox. Okay. And that might be an important place to begin, right? That might be an important place to begin one's journey with the intention of clearing and cleaning and a sense of purification. So that is that works for me. And then Temian says dandelion is supposed to open third eye, connect with spirit. Okay, so this is where I was going to see if this suit of air is going to take us into third eye chakra. Now, originally last on the 31st, when I posed this question, I was wondering if because the element of air is connected to the heart chakra. And so I was wondering how many heart chakra herbs are included in this particular element. So I'm just going to share that with you. Hello, Joseph, welcome. And I know this is not fixed in stone, So I'm going to go through, I don't know. So catnip. So catnip is in the mint family. I'm thinking it is also an astringent, but I don't know about that one. Alfalfa, don't know. Sage. So sage is definitely going to fit into this category of raising frequency and purification. So that one fits in very nicely. We have a strong cleansing effect also offered through echinacea, but a little bit different energy than I was going with. Chicory, I don't know. Yarrow is very calming, so I have had yarrow tea. Eucalyptus kind of falls into the same category as echinacea as far as I'm concerned. Cattail is used in a very different way. Licorice is cleansing, but here we go. Okay, so lavender. This is definitely connected to the heart chakra, as opposed to the mind. And this is one of the primary herbs that is used in, I want to say, connection of mandalas, sand paintings, and so forth, in used for feeding and putting intention into things. I know it's very easy to collect, and you can also just dry the leaves and use the leaves as offerings, much like tobacco is used as an offering, as a exchange, reciprocity when you're taking other plants. But for me, this is definitely heart chakra. Pomegranate. You would think with the bloody juice it would be. From what Tamianne said, this would be third eye chakra. Oregano seems a little bit spicy for me. And okay, so these are the two that we use in the yoga practice. These are the two that my yoga teacher, when I started doing, what does she call it? Yoga ecology. So when I was studying yoga ecology, these are the two plants that help the heart connect to the trees and the plants and the earth. So I thought it was really uncanny that both of these plants were in the suit of air. And I think maybe that's why I asked this question in the first place. I don't want to paste a chakra label on each of these suits, because the lessons of all of the chakras can be applied to many cards of many suits. But I just thought that was interesting. Okay. All right. So if you're doing a reading this week, see if you can use the suit of air as the lens or the filter through which you view the reading. Okay. And next week, we're going to look at the suit of fire, which has these plants have a very different intention. And then we can contrast, can I say, the purpose or the intention of the suit. And I think this is a really good thing to pause and do right now, because if we have big picture, big scan of the deck, it makes the readings a lot easier, because then we don't get lost in the details of things that are really challenging, like remembering what the tea of that particular plant is used for, and so forth. Okay. Let's go to Joseph's comment. So many people get rid of dandelions thinking it's just a weed. And there's also, so the other concern is that when we are foraging, and I know there's quite a few plants that are foraged by the side of the highway, I think we need to be mindful of the emissions from automobiles and trucks, and also any underground pollution that may be present. It's important when we're foraging to reflect upon the air and the water and the soil that is around us as well too. And that I'm just saying that because if your neighbors are poisoning their dandelions, I would not use your dandelion root or even your dandelion flowers. It's important, you know, if you can get into a community where people are not poisoning their plants. Yeah. And I suppose this even speaks to, you know, your vegetable garden and so forth. You want to be mindful of what's going on in the neighboring gardens as well too. I have, do you remember, so when my kids were little, so my kids are in their mid to late 20s. My son is 29. They all go the 2 years apart. When they were little, I remember there was a strawberry ban. There was strawberries were, I forget, what's the word? You know, when they take them off the shelf at the supermarket. And the reason for this was that the strawberries were being sprayed. So the irrigation channels were next to a cattle farm. So the irrigation water on the neighboring strawberry farm was poisoned because of the bacteria from the cattle feces in the water that got sprayed on the strawberries. So the bacteria on the strawberries was harmful to humans. So all of that is, it's the chain, right? The chain, the effect, that the effects of what we do is, we need to be really mindful of that, of where we throw things and what we spray and so forth. Hello, Vrag. Dandelion means in Hungarian that your wish will come true. Collect its seeds and blow them away. Direct connection with God. Yes, and I think that's quite universal. It is. It's a sign of hope. It's a sign of, it is. It's like a prayer, right? It's like a prayer. Evangelina says it means the same in Brazil. Okay. All right. So that's your challenge for this week, is to reflect upon the power of observation. And perhaps, you know, sometimes when I change my glasses too, I think, okay, these glasses, I'm going to look through a certain lens, but other glasses, I'm going to look through a different perspective. I don't know. Anyway, have fun with this. I'll see you next week, and we're going to talk about the suit of fire. Take good care. Namaste, everybody.